Everybody. This is the second part of the chapter Trick Candy. You lucked out, Summer said. We used to be a treasure hunting society. Remember, yesterday she had said that they were she was looking for a treasure. So they're responding to that. Only we couldn't find any treasures to hunt, Trevor mumbled. That guy who chased us is after the same treasure? Nate asked. Apparently, word is out that the treasure is in the vicinity, meaning area, Mrs. White said. The treasure is ancient, dating back to the mighty civilizations who inhabited the American continents before European colonization. The treasure has been relocated numerous times and sought by many adventurers. I wonder who moves it, I'm just thinking. But some recent discoveries have given those who take an interest in such matters good reason to believe its final resting place is in or near this town. My ancestor, Hanover Mills, was in possession of clues regarding the location of the treasure. He passed out of this life without realizing his dream of uncovering it, and I intend to pick up where he left off. Interesting. So now it makes sense why she wanted the things from the clock in the book, or the watch in the book, I mean. That's why you wanted the book, to look for clues. Precisely, Mrs. White affirmed. Hard to say where the clues I am seeking will be found. The book and the pocket watch are possible starting points. Hanover was an eccentric man. It's tough to anticipate where his secrets might be hidden. You four did nice work this weekend and should feel entitled to a reward. Mrs. White reached under the table and lifted a metal box that had a keyhole in the front. Turning a key in the hole, she raised the top of the box and removed 6 pieces of candy. There appeared to be 3 different kinds, 2 of each. Trick candy, she announced. Okay, remember, that's what the title of the chapter is, so there's a reason. To baffle and dismay your enemies. Baffle means confuse. Cool, Trevor said, stretching out the word so it lasted a few seconds. Like the majority of my candy, it will have little effect on individuals who have already consumed white fudge, and it is more potent on youngsters, meaning stronger on youngsters, than adults. What does it do? Pigeon asked. She picked up a yellow crystalline treat. I call these sunstones. They function like the opposite of a moon rock, increasing the pull of gravity. The candy reinforces the anatomy of the recipient to prevent the crushing force from inflicting lasting damage. She indicated a second candy that looked like a miniature brownie. That is a whisker cake. Sorry, I lost my spot. Makes hair grow at an unusual rate. She tapped the last kind of candy, which looked like a solid sphere of root beer, and one of my trick candy masterpieces, the Dizzy Fizzer. I'll let you see for yourselves what it does. What are the names of those boys that give you a hard time? Denny Clegg, Eric Andrews, and Kyle Knowles, Summer said. Any of those treats should give them a memorable payback for whatever wrongs they've inflicted, Mrs. White said. Do we get any candy we can use for ourselves? Asked Nate. You get to keep the leftover candy from the museum mission, which should include several mouthfuls of shock bits, along with your stash of moon rocks. And I'll be coming up with another task for you soon, which no doubt will involve a bunch of new candy. Check back with me tomorrow. Mrs. White stood up in a way that suggested the conversation was over. I have a question, Pigeon says. The white fudge seems stronger than you described. It's like my mom hardly notices me anymore. She notices you, Mrs. White said. She just doesn't pay enough attention to get you in trouble. The effect will go away when I stop making white fudge. For now, be glad you have the diversion you need to go adventuring in the night. My dad forgot to take me to school today, Summer said. You may have to help your parents remember to include you in their plans from time to time, Mrs. White said. It's a necessary side effect. Our teacher, Miss Doolin, ate the fudge and is acting strange too, not just to us, to all the kids. I'm guessing your teacher has a strong personality, Mrs. White said. She's pretty strict, Nate said, or she was. Mrs. White nodded as if this were to be expected. The white fudge tends to normalize extreme personalities. Again, the effect is temporary, lasting only as long as the subject continues to consume the fudge. I won't be selling it forever. When I'm done here, I'll move on and all will return to normal. She ushered the kids towards the door. Are, are they becoming addicted to the fudge? My parents keep buying tons of it. No more addicted than some people are to their favorite breakfast cereal, Mrs. White said. The fudge is really yummy. The kids returned to the front of the store. It was even more packed with customers than before. A middle-aged man with a mustache was walking away from the counter holding a tower of stacked white fudge boxes. Really, really yummy, Nate muttered to Trevor. And again, there's one of those breaks in the page. Nate folded the lined paper and creased it, smoothing his hands over it carefully. Miss Doolan had given them 30 minutes before lunch to study. She had not specified what they should study, nor did she seem to care as she sat at her desk, sneaking pieces of white fudge from her drawer. Nate had elected to study the science of folding and throwing paper airplanes. He put the finishing touches on the plane and sent it sailing to the front of the room. It veered left, sliding onto the floor beside Miss Doolan's desk. She sat hunched over a stack of papers, green marker in hand, chewing with her eyes closed. She did not notice the paper airplane, just as she had not noticed the four others, including the one that had bounced off her shoulder. Now, from what we read earlier in their book, you know that that's not normal behavior for the teacher. The lunch bell rang, interrupting the steady murmur of talking in the room. There had not been much teaching since the first bell rang, and even less discipline. It was as if Miss Doolan were a day away from retirement and just didn't care anymore. Miss Doolan looked up. "Have a good lunch," she said. "Get ready to hit the books when you get back." Yesterday, when class had ended, she had pledged that the next day would be very busy, which meant that today should have gone a lot differently. Somewhere in the fudge-addled haze of her mind, Miss Doolan seemed to feel guilty enough about how she was slacking off to at least pretend she had plans to improve, but Nate suspected the class would keep getting less orderly. "You ready?" Pigeon asked. "Of course," Nate said. They strolled out of the room with Summer and met Trevor among the tables in the lunch area. Most of the lunch tables were either indoors or on a central concrete patio surrounded by buildings on three sides. But there were a few isolated lunch tables around the corner from the main area. They were rarely used, but Trevor, Summer, Nate, and Pigeon hurried to the exiled tables to claim their spot. They did not want the supernatural spectacle to play out in front of the whole school. "What if they don't find us over here?" Pigeon asked. "Oh, they'll find us," Summer assured him. "They'll think we're trying to hide because we're not in our regular spot, and they'll wonder what special dessert Pigeon has today." "Do I look like I'm eating casually?" Pigeon said, taking another bite from his sandwich. "Lean back a little more," Nate instructed, "and kind of dip your shoulder." "Your right eye is open too wide," Trevor said. "Close it halfway." "Tilt your head," Nate suggested. Pigeon looked increasingly silly as he followed all of their directions. "Knock it off, you guys," Summer said. "Pigeon, don't try to act casual. Just be casual, or be nervous, but don't be fake." "Hey," called a voice coming around the corner of the building. Then he walked toward them, followed by Eric and Kyle. "What's with the new table? You guys too cool to eat with everybody else?" "More like they're hiding," Eric said. "Where's the jacket, Pigeon?" Kyle teased. "I'm starting to miss it." "At least you still have your army jacket to keep you company," Nate said. Kyle was wearing the same jacket he had worn at the creek. He wore it most days. "Does it remind you of your days serving our country?" "Man," Denny said, "disbelief, you do not know when to be quiet. That mouth is going to get you in trouble one of these days. Hey, Pigeon, what's for dessert today?" Pigeon clutched his lunch bag close to his chest. "Nothing you'd want." "We're not picky," Eric said, reaching for the bag. Pigeon let him have it, and Eric handed it to Denny. "See, Pigeon knows how to keep things simple," Denny said, rummaging through the sack. He pulled out a sandwich bag with three unusual pieces of candy inside. "What have we here? A special treat? What are these, Pigeon?" "Candy," he said. "Not a lot, though," Denny said. "Only one for each of us." He sniffed the yellow crystalline candy, kept that, and handed the sandwich bag to Eric, who chose the one that looked like the little brownie, and Kyle received the root beer sphere. "I've never seen candy like this," Kyle said, eyeing the brown ball. "Where'd you get it?" "I don't know. My mom picked it up somewhere," Pigeon said. Eric started chewing his candy, and Denny and Kyle popped theirs into their mouths. "Not bad," Denny said, "like lemon meringue pie. Sort of sticks to my mouth, though." Denny swayed, a worried look crossing his face, and began to stoop. Straining, he managed to wrench himself upright. His features dropped, his arms hung trembling at his sides. Suddenly, as if his legs were loaded with mousetraps, his body whipped down to the concrete patio with a mighty slap. So the way the other ones made them float, it's making him go down to the ground. "What did you give us?" Eric said, his hair already down to his shoulders, his eyebrows getting bushier, wispy whiskers emerging on his chin. Kyle staggered and clutched the end of the lunch table to steady himself. "Oh, no," he moaned, eyes wide, one hand on his stomach. Then he did not move. He groaned when his entire body appeared to be glued to the patio. "Sorry, I lost my spot." Eric crouched beside Denny, hair growing so swiftly that his head looked like a fountain, but he could not even budge one of Denny's arms. Cal dropped to his knees, still gripping the end of the table. "This is impossible," Eric stammered, rising to his feet, the hair on his scalp already reaching the ground, the long hairs of his sparse beard reaching beyond his waist. "Are you okay, Kyle?" Kyle opened his mouth to respond, and amber foam frothed from his lips. He covered his mouth, but despite his efforts to contain it, a bubbly stream of foam gushed out, much of it splashing onto Denny's immobilized legs. Eric ran away, his hair trailing behind him on the ground like a long bridle train, his beard dangling between his legs. Froth continued to faucet from Kyle's nose and mouth as well as to foam all around him. Panicking, Kyle stumbled to his feet and tried to run, but he leaned heavily to one side and flopped to the ground after only a few paces. Summer watched the display in amazement. Nate and Trevor and Pigeon laughed uncontrollably. Pigeon had tears streaming down his cheeks as the foam erupting from Kyle began to subside, leaving his clothes completely drenched. Nate tapped Summer and said, "We better beat it." Summer nodded. Denny had not moved an inch. He continued to groan, while the others hurried away. Pigeon squatted beside him and said, "You better learn to watch what you eat." Now, that's the end of chapter 6. So when I send the next video, it will be chapter 7, which is called A Grave Assignment, which means a serious assignment. Have a great day.